Albert Einstein has been quoted as saying if the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would have only 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man. However, that can be debated as it can't be proven as a reliable quote. What cannot be debated is just how important bees are to our planet. In 2022, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations stated that a third of the world's food production depends on bees. Sadly, we've been killing bees in this country for a long time. Carl Johansson from the Department of Entomology at Washington State University in January 1977 stated in his annual review of entomology that bee poisoning, the accidental killing of bees through the use of insecticides, first became a problem in the United States during the 1870s. The problems remained restricted and localized until the surge of modern agricultural methods following World War II. As modern farming grew and expanded, new methods were adopted to make farming as profitable and prolific as possible. Part of modern farming has been the increased use of pesticides in order to meet the needs of consumer demand. One type of pesticide is derived from nicotine, a neonicotinoid. Ronnie Dingler of PBS NewsHour published an article on their website in June of 2017 confronting the issue that neonicotinoid pesticides are slowly killing bees. This common class of insecticide does not destroy the bee colonies outright, instead it slowly kills them over time. The pesticide not only reduces a bee's chance of survival, but also causes lower reproductive rates in colonies due to the bee queen being affected. The bee's natural defense system rely on social immunity, since they clean out dead or sick brood insects from the nest. Colonies affected by pesticides stop this behavior over time, which leads to more sick bees staying and infecting the nests. The tainted hive then loses its queen and will struggle to find a new one. Without a queen, there will be no future bees. Amr Zayed and a biology team at New York University in Toronto measured the effects over a 5-month growing season of neonicotinoid-treated seeds in Canadian cornfields. Neonicotinoids dissolve in water and easily make their way into waterways through agricultural runoff. Therefore, flowers miles away from a farm can absorb the chemicals, which then seep into stems, leaves, pollen, and nectar. Zayed's research team looked for the presence of neonicotinoids in dead bees, forager bees, nurse bees, larvae, pollen, and nectar. They found a combination of herbicides, fungicides, and pesticides, including neonicotinoids. The researchers were surprised to detect neonicotinoids mostly on pollen from plants located near the crop fields. Local plants such as willow trees, clovers, and wildflowers had a higher rate of contamination than the corn that was planted. Thanks to Zayed's study in Science in June 2017, ecologists now know that bees are not exposed to pesticides near a treated flowering crop. They are also exposed through agricultural runoff. The research proved that the pesticides keep going and affecting bees throughout the growing season. The Canadian study also showed that the chemicals, herbicides, and fungicides make neonicotinoids more toxic. These don't just affect worker bees' mortality on their own, but when exposed to a fungicide in combination with a neonicotinoid, then it only takes half as many chemicals to kill as many bees. The National Library of Medicine and the National Center for Biotechnology conducted research to evaluate the impact of commonly used pesticides on honeybees in Ethiopia and published their findings back in March of this year. They knew that environmental stability, apicultural industry, and apiaries are all under threat with the global honeybee losses and bee colony decline. Honeybees are well known for their value as pollinators, but also generate income from their own commercial products like healthy foods and alternate medicine. Bees are not only a key contributor to the global economy, but are the single most important species pollinator in ecosystems around the world. About half of the leading global food commodities depend on bees for either fruit formation or seed set. Bees are the most efficient pollinators for most staple food crops, cash crops, fruit trees, and vegetables. The large-scale decline and outright loss of pollinators, including bees, has been reported worldwide. Beekeepers in the U.S. have lost around half of the managed honeybee colonies in 2021, which is our highest annual loss on record. Colony loss is still unclear, but worldwide it's assumed that the bee population is affected by climate change, intensive agriculture, pests and pathogens, biodiversity loss, and pesticide use. Earlier studies had already concluded that the extensive exposures to bees to pesticide appeared to be the major factor for honeybee loss and colony decline. In order to find more specific answers on the pesticide problem, the National Library of Medicine and the National Center for Biotechnology conducted testing to study not only a wide range of pesticides, but how their exposure would affect the poisoning severity and effects. The research found that both the way the chemical is applied and the amount of time the bees are exposed to the pesticide all do change the bee's lifespan in different ways. but all with negative impacts. The research team observed that a bee is significantly more susceptible to poisoning via ingestion compared to fumigation or even bodily contact in tests. Therefore, the worst effects on bees were caused by exposures to plants that had pesticides applied or eating food that had been contaminated by pesticide-laced pollen or nectar. It's clear from the research that pesticides easily affect the local bee population in a dramatic way. So they concluded it was an urgent matter to enforce existing policies, regulate illegal pesticide marketing, develop policies to exclude the misuse of highly toxic pesticide incidents, set stringent criteria for both the registration and market less harmful products. So then what's the solution? There's no one easy answer. However, in 2012, Daryl Conley of Plant Health Australia compiled suggestions on how to improve the issue of honeybee pesticide poisoning with a risk management tool for Australian farmers and beekeepers. Obviously, farmers need to be aware of the impact that pesticides have on the ecosystem surrounding their farms. Farmers should adopt integrated pest management principles and reduce the need for chemical use. Owners of any hives within a 5-kilometer radius minimum should be notified before spraying so they can relocate or protect their bees. The weather should be monitored to plan the most appropriate spraying conditions to minimize spray drift affecting non-target flowering crops, hives, and water. Farmers are supposed to ensure that bees are not foraging in the target area. And for some pesticides, that is even a legal requirement. To lower the chance of bees foraging, farmers should mow any flowering weeds inside targeted spray areas. Lastly, farmers should consult an agronomist and an apiarist in order to select chemicals that pose a low risk to bees that can still achieve the desired outcome for their business. Daryl Conley also had suggestions to assist apiarists in reducing the risk of honeybee poisoning with various practices. If the beekeeper is in an area with any farmers, they should work together to plan a chemical application program that works for both parties. That way, if the farmer needs to apply chemicals, the hive should be moved prior to chemical application. Beekeepers should reach out to all the surrounding landowners so they can be made aware that you can own bees and provide their contact information so they can be contacted. Beekeepers should also mark their hives or have a signpost with contact information for their apiary. Before placing hives, beekeepers should seek advice from locals, consider prevailing winds, and select a sheltered area that would offer protection from spray drift. Apiarists should inspect hives on a regular schedule so any symptoms of bee poisoning can be identified early. Beekeepers should have an area at least 3 km away from where they can relocate hives if needed. It's important to provide bees with both water and flowers within a protected range close to the hives. Bees require a lot of fresh water, and if a source isn't readily available, they may drink chemically contaminated water. Bees have been known to forage up to 12 km away from their hives, so you need to relocate the hives when needed. Of course, we aren't beekeepers or farmers, so what can everyday people do to help bees? I personally do not use any chemicals on my property. I also plant local wildflowers, as well as keeping a few flower gardens. You can also make a safe source of water for your foraging bees to drink with a thin dish filled with water and pebbles or flat marbles. That way the bees can stand on the objects in the shallow tray and have access to clean water. I also support local apiarists, but I must admit that has more to do with my love of honey and tea. You can also buy organic whenever possible. Sadly, even pesticides allowed for use in organic agriculture can cause harm to bees and other beneficial insects. Organic farmers do have stricter rules that they must follow in regard to pesticide usage, though. If possible, it's best to grow your own garden, or at least support your local farmers market stands that don't use pesticides. Overall, I think one of the most important things you can start doing today is spreading the word of the importance of bees. Talk to your neighbors and make sure they aren't spraying chemicals. Send helpful information about pesticides and integrated pest management to local farmers. Together, we can help save the bees and save our planet.